I'm
Okay,
good. Aha, recording in progress. Here we go.
done it.
Here we go. Here we
So
go.
here we are. So this is just really to sort of say, like, so what are we going to do? We're bringing a group of people together to unpick, explore, investigate, expose the things they can't bear to look at, the knots.
Yeah, I love I worked with Jodorowsky a lot in my younger years, and one of his books on psychomagic in French was titled The Theater of Healing.
Mm,
And I love this idea that through enacting realistic or meta-realistic or surrealistic or super realistic situations involving, expressions of the subconscious, involving deformations, involving irony, mystery, like the kind of work that you do with the Bouffon, we can actually begin to see, because seeing paradoxically is the only way to heal.
mm,
So, most people, most of the time, you, all of us go through life with buffers, like Gurdjieff says, with lots of like self-tranquilizers where we don't want to see what's inside of us. We don't want to see where we come from. We don't really want to feel the intensity of pain or trauma or absurdity that we have been raised with, because we're humans and humans are traumatic and wounded and wounding and absurd. And so we create these masks and these quiet personalities, even people who are performers. You can see people, they have a repertoire where they will enter, or someone who's a poet and they will treat the same themes with the same metaphors over and over again. So how do we strip ourselves from this character of the survival, basically, that we are, so that we can play with places that are more vulnerable and more shameful and more crazy and more juicy and creative and deep in ourselves, based on our own history, like to redefine or reopen our identity. So the idea is that how do we work with what I call the knots in the family tree, which is basically a scale of development of the child that goes through monstrous phases. Freud used to say it's a polymorphic pervert. I don't know if the phrase is right in English. So, a baby of 8 years old is naturally cannibalistic. He will like suck the milk, but even the blood from his mother if he needs to. And he will suck the time of everybody. If you allow an 8-month-old baby to just devour everything that's around him, it's absolutely lawful that he does. And oftentimes the people who are around that baby, they get like, no, 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 and they don't give enough, or they give, in my case, for instance, when I was born, I was fed artificially with glucose for 3 days, because that was the crazy idea of the time, that the mother's first milk, like the colostrum, wasn't good for the child. So that creates a cannibalistic knot, because the life inside of you knows that you have not been met
mm,
with what was lawful at the time. So paradoxically, then you grow up to be a cannibal, which means you overeat or undereat or smoke or take drugs or steal attention from others. It's this idea of eating yourself, which is the case in every kind of addiction, or feeding on the energy of others. And
mm.
there's 7 nuts like that, which I'm not going to unveil because we will see them in the workshop. But the first one is really very clear. And it's wonderful because those are monsters inside of us. And those are also lawful impulses if we go back to the baby. What's more divine than seeing a baby suckling on his or her mother's breast? It's wonderful. It's the image of ecstasy. And from that ecstasy comes growth, the next step, etc. So the idea was to pair up with you and your Bouffon abilities that I hope you're going to tell us about, to investigate um, in a shameless and delightful way these seven monsters that we have inside, that the family tree has inside, and how can we bring them to the maximum of their monstrosity so that they shift into, like those demons who try to challenge Shiva or Vishnu in the Indian myths. And suddenly when they're seen and exposed and ultimately defeated, they become the greatest disciples. So there is something holy about unlocking the monster, because if you don't see the dragon, you can't slay the dragon. And slaying the dragon, when I look at St. George's icon, I see this the spear, which is actually not a weapon, it's the seeing. It's this like vertical vision from above. So art has that quality. When we're on stage and we perform or we do any kind of art, we can give something to the seeing of ourselves and others. And the dragon is slain. So from the most grotesque, exaggerated, insane, whatever performance can be born a ray of light. It's like the kissing the frog in the fairy tales.
I think that
So what do you have to say about that?
well, you said grotesque, delightful, shameless, and transformation. So, like the Bouffon being this kind of social creature, but coming from an other place,
Mm.
is able to shine light into the darkness by being the darkness.
Yeah,
Like by
yeah,
all those parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, the deformed parts, the parts that we want to push out, with this play, we bring them up onto the surface and we embrace them, we embody them, we expand, we contract, we lengthen, we change our form to be able to hold these huge, powerful impulses that come through us. And we learn how to play, we learn how to mock, we learn how to pull something into a completely different shape through wonder and mystery. Because
yeah.
we need to be able to understand that we're not going to understand. But in
Mm,
the witnessing and in this amazing potential to be both on your own and part of a group, to have
mm,
your experience amplified by this chorus of creatures, because
mm.
we are all creatures. And I think to be
Yeah,
able to sort of drop the social mask and allow for this creatureness to come in, which is not something which is it's shameless, it's not shameful.
yeah,
It
yeah.
is fully alive and it's fully able to play with anything, all of the aspects of ourselves. And because we have everything within us. And so to also engage with the tarot, to allow that for that element of chance to come in, where we're not dictating, oh, this is my shadowy bit, this is my area of pain, but to let the body and the subconscious meet the archetypes and take that as the invitation to open up, I think is going to be, I think that for me that's so much of a game. We go into the play, and that's what's really exciting up to me. Like we get to play, and through play, all of I was reading something. I was like, it was like maybe it was something from the Buddhist canon, but it was like like you cannot laughter destroys the block of fear. Laughter and being able to release, or that's another Gurdjieff thing about the laughter being this kind of like release of energy. You circulate the energy again. It stops being held in the body and held in the muscles. So
Yeah.
cathartically, it feels very important to touch all of that.
Yeah, you said something very important about the mystery. We both have a lineage with the Lecoq school, and Lecoq was insisting very much on the Bouffons as ultimately the bearers of mystery. And I mean, it's very interesting because it's this notion of the darkness as the matrix, as the dark Virgin, the dark Mary, or the dark, Kali, or the darkness of the mother, the womb, inside which the light of clarity, of perfect art, of wonderful vision is born. So there is something of a gestation in that kind of work, because it's not just the idea of reveling in, like a Grand Guignol or that kind of like theater of the horrid or gory things. It's about going through the swamp, the darkness, the grotesque, the matrix, the matter, because all of the things we're going to treat have to do with the fact that we are beings of matter, and matter means survival. And survival means inside any relationship of love, there will be hurt. Because at some point, the person that we trust, whether a parent, a partner, whatever, is going to choose their survival over ours. And that's the beauty and the tragedy of the human, is that even the best, the most wonderful father, mother, lover, at some point you will always feel abandoned and betrayed, even if it's for a fraction of a second. And that's the horror and the beauty of humanity as we want to bring it on stage. And you said something about the tarot. So as you know, I'm very familiar with the allegories of the tarot. And there's something very specific about them, which is that none of them is just positive or just negative. When I look at the major arcana, it's always about whether they are in a stagnant situation, swamped, or whether they are in a birthing situation towards their next step. So it's very interesting because those allegories can represent the deepest blocks and fears and impossibilities, and they can represent the very lies inside the obstacle. So in the workshop, I'm going to present um, a, a way of looking at the tarot, which I have never written or published about, which is the sevenfold numerology, which is connected with the seven knots of the family tree, which I think is really important because it's a way of having a glimpse of a structure of what our um, rainbow of expression is. And we can, of course, use those characters because they are in themselves Buffonesque. They can be very human and very normal, but it's just there's always something a little bit. Well, I'm talking about the Tarot of Marseille. There's always something a little bit exaggerated about them that we can push into an expression. So 4 days is going to be very short
Going
to
to be
have that
fun.
much fun.
But it's going to be perfect. So it's the end of September, the 25th, 26th, 27th, here in my wonderful studio space in Reinickendorf Makeup. You'll see the details just down here. So please, we have a few spaces left, but they're
Yeah.
going very quickly. So come and join us. It's going to be wild.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Marianne. Bueno, gracias. I'll stop recording now. Okay.